Hey everyone, how are you? So evidently, I misplaced my other copy of the Silver Chair, which I'm really bummed about. I have at least two, maybe three copies of the Chronicles of Narnia. One at school, a couple at home, but then my really great copy that was hardcover with Chris Van Allsburg artwork. I really like that edition. And for some reason, I misplaced it. I'm not entirely sure where it is. I'll find it. I will find it. But for today, I'm going to be reading Chapter 4 from The Silver Chair out of this edition. Not my favorite. Softcover artwork is a little computer generated for my taste. However, the book is still the same. It's an excellent story. So, Chapter 4. Picture at the top. Can you see it? I think so. All right, here we go. Chapter 4. A Parliament of Owls. It's a very funny thing that the sleepier you are, the longer you take getting to bed, especially if you are lucky enough to have a fire in your room. Jill felt she couldn't even start undressing unless she sat down in front of the fire for a bit first. And once she had sat down, she didn't want to get up again. She had already said to herself about 5 times, "I must go to bed," when she was startled by a tap on the window. She got up, pulled the curtain, and at first saw nothing but darkness. Then she jumped and started backwards, for something very large had dashed itself against the window, giving a sharp tap on the glass as it did so. A very unpleasant idea came into her head. Suppose they have giant moths in this country. Ugh! But then the thing came back, and this time she almost was sure she saw a beak, and that the beak had made the tapping noise. It's a huge bird, thought Jill. Could it be an eagle? She didn't very much want to visit even from an eagle, but she opened the window and looked out, and instantly, with a great whirring noise, the creature alighted on the windowsill, and stood there. Here, hold on, I'm sorry, I'm going to adjust something really quickly. I'm having trouble with my video setup today. I'm really sorry. Instantly, with a great whirring noise, the creature alighted on the windowsill and stood there, filling up the whole room. So that... See what I mean? I'm having trouble today. If you're reading along at home, I am so sorry. If you're not, I'm still so sorry. Instantly, with a great whirring noise, the creature alighted on the windowsill and stood there filling up the whole window, so that Jill had to step back to make room for it. It was the owl. "Hush, hush, too, said the owl. "Don't make a noise. Now, are you two really in earnest about what you've got to do?" "About the lost prince, you mean?" said Jill. "Yes, we've got to be." For now she remembered the lion's voice and face, which she had nearly forgotten during the feasting and storytelling in the hall. "Good," said the owl. "Then there's no time to waste. You must get from here at once. I'll go and wake the other human, then I'll come back for you. You'd better change those court clothes and put on something you can travel in. I'll be back in 2 2s. Doo-hoo, doo-hoo." And without waiting for an answer, he was gone. If Jill had been more used to adventures, she might have doubted the owl's word, but this never occurred to her, and in the exciting idea of a midnight escape, she forgot her sleepiness. She changed back into her sweater and shorts. There was a guide's knife on the belt of the shorts, which might come in useful, and added a few of the things that had been left in the room for her by the girl with willowy hair. She chose a short cloak that came down to her knees and had a hood. Just the thing if it rains, she thought. A few handkerchiefs and a comb, and then she sat down and waited. She was getting sleepy again when the owl returned. "Now we're ready," it said. "You'd better lead the way," said Jill. I don't know these passages yet." "Doo-doo," said the owl. "We're not going through the castle. That would never do. You must ride on me. We shall fly." "Oh," said Jill, and stood with her mouth open, not much liking the idea. "Shan't I be far too heavy for you?" "Doo-doo, don't you be a fool. I've already carried the other one now. But we'll put out that lamp first." And as soon as the lamp was out, the bit of night which she saw through the window looked less dark, no longer black, but gray. The owl stood on the windowsill with his back to the room and raised his wings. Jill had to climb onto his short, fat body and get her knees under the wings and grip tight. The feathers felt beautifully warm and soft. But there was nothing to hold on to. I wonder how Scrub liked his ride, thought Jill. And just as she was thinking this, with a horrid plunge, they had left the windowsill, and the wings were making a flurry round her ears, and the night air, rather cool and damp, was flying in her face. It was much lighter than she expected, and though the sky was overcast, one patch of watery silver showed where the moon was hiding above the clouds. The fields beneath her looked gray and the trees black, and there was a certain amount of wind, a hushing, ruffling sort of wind, which meant that the rain was coming soon. The owl wheeled round so that the castle was now ahead of them. Very few of the windows showed lights. They flew right over it northward, crossing the river. The air grew colder, and Jill thought she could see the white reflection of the owl in the water beneath her. But soon they were in the north bank of the river, flying above wooded country. The owl snapped at something which Jill couldn't see. "Oh, don't please," said Jill. "Don't jerk like that. You nearly threw me off." "Oh, I beg your pardon," said the owl. "I was just nabbing a bat. There's nothing so sustaining in a small way as a nice, plump little bat. Shall I catch you one?" "No, thanks," said Jill with a shudder. He was flying a little lower now, and a large, black-looking object was looming up toward them. Jill had just time to see that it was a tower, a partly ruinous tower, with a lot of ivy on it, she thought, when she found herself ducking to avoid the archway of a window as the owl squeezed with her through the ivied, cobwebby opening, out of the fresh gray night and into the dark place inside the top of the tower. It was rather fusty inside, and the moment she slipped off the owl's back, she knew, as one usually does somehow, that it was quite crowded. And when the voices began saying out of the darkness from every direction, "Doo, doo, doo," she knew it was crowded with owls. She was rather relieved when a different voice said, "Is that you, Pole?" "Is that you, Scrub?" said Jill. "Now," said Glimwither, "I think we're all ready here. Let us hold a parliament of owls." "Do, do, true for you. That's the right thing to do," said several voices. "Half a minute," said Scrub's voice. "There's something I want to say first." "Do, do, do," said the owls, and Jill said, "Fire ahead." "I suppose all you chaps, owls I mean," said Scrub, "I suppose you all know that King Caspian X in his young days sailed to the eastern edge of the world. Well, I was with him on that journey. With him and Reepicheep the mouse, and Lord Drinian and all of them. I know it sounds hard to believe, but people don't grow older in our world at the same speed that they do in your world. And what I want to say is this, that I'm the king's man, and if this parliament of owls is any sort of plot against the king, I'm having nothing to do with it." "Do, do, do, we're all the king's owls too," said the owl. "Well, what's this about then?" said Scrub. "It's only this," said Glimfeather, "that if the Lord Regent, the dwarf Trumpkin, hears that you are going for the lost prince, he won't let you start. He'd keep you under lock and key sooner." "Great Scott," said Scrub. "You don't mean that Trumpkin is a traitor? I used to hear a lot about him at the old days at sea. Caspian, the king I mean, trusted him absolutely." "Oh, no," said a voice. "Trumpkin's no traitor. He's more than 30 champions. Knights, centaurs, good giants, and all sorts, have at one time or another set out to look for the lost prince, and none of them have ever come back. And the last of the king said he was not going to have all the bravest Narnians destroyed in the search for his son. And now, nobody is allowed to go." "But surely he'd let us go," said Scrub, "when he knew who I was and who had sent me." "Sent both of us," put in Jill. "Yes," said Glimfeather. "I think very likely he would. But the king's away, and Trumpkin will stick to the rules. He's as true as steel, but he's deaf as a post and very peppery. You could never make him see that this might be the time for making an exception to the rules." "You might think he'd take some notice of us because we're owls and everyone else knows how wise owls are," said someone else. "But he's so old now, he'd only say, 'You're a mere chick. I remember when you were an egg. Don't come trying to teach me, Sir Crabs and Crumpets.'" The owl imitated Trumpkin's voice rather well, and there were sounds of owlish laughter all around. "Ooh." Sorry. The children began to see that the Narnians all felt about Trumpkin as people feel at school about some crusty teacher whom everyone is a little afraid of and everyone makes fun of and nobody really dislikes. How long is the king going to be away? Asked Scrubbed. Oh, if only we knew, said Glimfeather. You see, there has been a rumor lately that Aslan himself has been seen in the islands, in Terabithia, I think it was. And the king said he would make one last attempt before he died to see Aslan face to face again and ask his advice about who was to be king after him. But we're all afraid that if he doesn't meet Aslan in Terabithia, he'll go east to the Seven Isles and the Lone Islands and on and on. He never talks about it, but we all know he has never forgotten that voyage to the world's end. I'm not sure. I'm sure in his heart of hearts he wants to go there again. And there's no good waiting for him to come back, said Jill. No good, said the owl. Oh, what did you do? If only you two had known and spoken to him at once. He'd have arranged everything, probably giving you an army to go with you in search of the prince. Jill kept quiet about this and hoped Scrub would be sporting enough not to tell all the owls why this hadn't happened. He was, or very nearly. That is, he only muttered under his breath, "It wasn't my fault," before saying out loud, "Very well. We'll have to manage without it, but there's just one more thing I want to know. If this owl's parliament, as you call it, is all fair and above board and means no mischief, why does it have to be so jolly secret, meeting in a ruin in the dead of night and all that?" "Too-hoo, hooted several hours. "Where should we meet? When would anyone meet except at night?" "You see," explained Glimweather, "most of the creatures of Narnia have such unusual habits. They do things by day in the broad blazing sunlight, when everyone ought to be asleep, and as a result at night they're so blind and stupid that you can't get a word out of them. So we owls have got into the habit of meeting at sensible hours on our own when we want to talk about things." "I see," said Scrub. "Well now, let's get on. Tell us about the Lost Prince." Then an old owl, not Glimweather, related the story. About 10 years, it appeared, when Rillian, the son of Caspian, was a very young knight. He rode with the queen, his mother, on a May morning in the north parts of Narnia. They had many squires and ladies with them, and all wore garlands of fresh leaves on their heads and horns at their sides, and they had no hounds with them, for they were maying, not hunting. And in the warm part of the day they came to a pleasant glade where a fountain flowed freshly out of the earth, and there they dismounted and ate and drank and were merry. And after a time the queen felt sleepy, and they spread cloaks for her on the grassy bank, and Prince Rillian with the rest of the party went a little way from her, that their tales and laughter might not wake her. And so presently a great serpent came out of the thick wood and stung the queen in her hand. At first all heard her cry out and rushed toward her, and Rillian was first at her side. He saw the worm gliding away from her, and made after it with his sword drawn. It was a great shining and green as poison, so that he could see it well, but it glided into the thick bushes, and he could not come at it. So he returned to his mother, and found them all busy about her, but they were busy in vain. For the first glance at her face, Rillian knew that no physic in the world would do her any good. As long as the life was in her, she seemed to be trying hard to tell him something, but she could not speak clearly, and whatever her message was, she died without delivering it. It was then hardly 10 minutes since they had first heard her cry. They carried the dead queen back to Cair Paravel, and she was mourned bitterly by Rillian, and by the king, and by all Narnia. She had been a great lady, wise, and gracious, and happy. King Caspian's bride, whom he had brought back home from the eastern end of the world, and men said that the blood of the stars flowed in her veins. The prince took his mother's death very hard, as well he might. After that, he was always riding on the northern marches of Narnia, hunting that venomous worm to kill it and be avenged. No one remarked much on this, though the prince came home from these wanderings looking tired and distraught. But about a month after the queen's death, some said they could see a change in him. There was a look in his eyes as of a man who has seen visions, and though he would be out all day, his horse did not bear the signs of hard riding. His chief friend among all the older courtiers was the Lord Drinian, who had been his father's captain on that great voyage to the east ends of the world. One evening Drinian said to the prince, "Your Highness must soon give over seeking that worm. There is no true vengeance on a witless brute as there might be on a man. You weary yourself in vain." And the prince answered him, My lord, I have almost forgotten the worm these 7 days. Drinian asked him why, if that was so, he rode so continually in the northern woods. My lord, said the prince, I have seen there the most beautiful thing that was ever made. Fair prince, said Drinian, of your courtesy let me ride with you tomorrow, that I may also see this fair thing. With good will, said Rilian. Then in good time and on the next day they saddled their horses and rode a great gallop into the northern woods, and alighted at the same fountain where the queen got her death. Drinian thought it was strange that the prince should choose that place of all places to linger in. And there they rested till it came to high noon, and at noon Drinian looked up and saw the most beautiful lady he had ever seen. And she stood at the north side of the fountain and said no word, but beckoned to the prince with her hand, as if she bade him to come to her. And she was tall and great, shining and wrapped in a thin garment as green as poison. And the prince stared at her like a man out of his wits. But suddenly the lady was gone. Drinian knew not where, and the two returned to Cair Paravel. It was stuck in Drinian's mind that this shining green woman was evil. Drinian doubted very much whether or not he ought to tell the adventure to the king, but he had little wish to be a blab and tale-bearer, so he held his tongue. But afterward he wished he had spoken. For the next day the Prince Rilian rode out again alone, and that night he came not back. And from that hour no trace of him was ever found in Narnia nor any neighboring land, and neither his horse nor his hat nor his cloak nor anything else was ever found. Then Drinian, in the bitterness of his heart, went to Caspian and said, Lord King, slay me speedily as a great traitor, for by my silence I have destroyed your son. And he told him the story. And then Caspian caught up a battle axe and rushed at Lord Drinian to kill him, and Drinian stood still as a stock for the death blow. But when the axe was raised, Caspian suddenly threw it away and cried out, I have lost my queen and my son. Shall I lose my friend also? And he fell upon the Lord Drinian's neck and embraced him, and both wept, and their friendship was not broken. Such was the story of Rilian, and when it was over, Jill said, I bet that serpent and the woman were the same person. True, true, we think the same as you, hooted the owl. But we don't think she killed the prince, said Glimweather, because no bones. We know she didn't, said Scrub. Aslan told Pole that she's still alive somewhere. He was still alive somewhere. That almost makes it worse, said the oldest owl. It means she has some use for him, and some very deep scheme against Narnia. Long, long ago, at the beginning, the White Witch came out of the north and bound our land in snow and ice for 100 years. We think this may be some of the same crew. Very well, then, said Scrub. Pole and I have got to find this prince. Can you help us? Have you any clue, you two? Asked Glimfeather. Yes, said Scrub. We know we've got to go north, and we know we've got to reach the ruins of a giant city. At this there was a greater too-hooing than ever, and the noises of birds shifting their feet and ruffling their feathers, and then all the owls started speaking at once. They all explained how very sorry they were that they themselves could not go with the children on their search for the lost prince. You'd want to travel by day, and we'd want to travel by night, they said. It wouldn't do. One or two owls added that even here in the ruined tower it wasn't nearly so dark as it had been when they began, and that the Parliament had been going on quite enough. In fact, the mere mention of the journey to the ruined city of the giants seemed to have dampened the spirit of those birds. But Glimfeather said, If they want to go that way into Edinsmore, we must take them to one of the Marshwiggles. They're the only people who can help them much. True, do, said the owls. Come on, then, said Glimfeather. I'll be the one who will take the other. It must be done tonight. I will, as far as the Marshwiggles, announced the owl. Are you asleep? Are you ready? Said Glimfeather to Jill. I think Pole's asleep, said Scrub. And that's the end of the chapter for today. Have a great day.